We are moving to this debate between Norm Finkelstein and Destiny. Dun, dun, dun. It was wild. It was crazy, a little hazy. In the beginning of the debate, it was actually pretty calm. And then things just got crazy. I actually have two clips that I want to go into from this debate. So Lex Clips actually took that debate and clipped it up into different segments, that's an easier way for you to watch it if you want to go to certain subjects. But they had a debate about Israel and Gaza. Destiny is on the pro-Israel side. Norm Finkelstein is obviously on the pro-Palestine side, or the right for Palestinians to have self-determination. And for those of you who are not familiar with Destiny, this guy actually started off as a gamer. So I think he was one of the first streamers to actually play video games online. That's how he started off, and then started to get into politics, and is heavily in support of Joe Biden. He's more of the establishment Democrat, right? So similar to David Pakman in reference to, we're going to back, Joe Biden and the Hillary Clintons of the world. He calls himself a progressive and a liberal. And I told you before, there is no two of that. Okay, you one or the other. You can't be in both camps there. But the first part I want to get into this discussion here is about why Palestinians rejected the partition plan. This is very important. A lot of Zionists like to use the talking point that Palestinians were offered a two-state solution. Let's get into this, because I think this is very interesting.
I just want to respond to a point you made earlier, which was that people expressed their rejection of the partition resolution on the grounds that it gave the majority of Palestine to the Jewish community, which formed only a third. Whereas, in fact, if I understood you correctly, you're saying the Palestinians and the Arabs would have rejected any partition resolution.
Yeah,
I think
a couple things. That one, they would have rejected any. Two, a lot of that land given was in the Negev. It was pretty terrible land at the time. And then three, the land that would have been partitioned to Jews, I think would have been, I think I saw it was like 500,000 it would have been 500,000 Jews, 400,000 Arabs, and I think like 80,000 Bedouin would have been there. So the state would have been divided pretty closely.
I think you raise a valid point, because I think the Palestinians did reject the partition of their homeland in principle. And I think the fact that the United Nations General Assembly then awarded the majority of their homeland to the Zionist movement only added insult to injury. I mean, one doesn't have to sympathize with the Palestinians to recognize that they have now been a stateless people for 75 years. Can you name any country, yours, for example, or yours, that would be prepared to give 55%, 25%, 10% of your country to the Palestinians? Of course not. And so the issue was not the existence of Jews in Palestine. They had been there for centuries. And of course, they had ties to Palestine, and particularly to Jerusalem and other places, going back centuries, if not millennia. But the idea of establishing an exclusively Jewish state at the expense of those who are already living there, I think it was right to reject that. And I don't think we can look back now, 75 years later, and say, well, you should have accepted losing 55% of your homeland because you ended up losing 78% of it, and the remaining 22% was occupied in 1967. That's not how things work.
Yeah,
and I can imagine.
Let's pause there. I thought that was this is the gentleman that's on the side with Norm. I honestly haven't seen someone explain that in a much better way, because what a lot of Zionists have been arguing is that, well, the Palestinians should have just accepted what was offered to them right off the bat. No. What if I came to your neighborhood and I said, get this, all right, you got an option. You can either give me 80% of this neighborhood, or you got to go. Like, What? Or if I came to your house and I said, all right, you have a 4-bedroom house. 3 of these bedrooms now belong to me. I'll let you keep the 1 bedroom. What? No, they shouldn't have to accept that. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to get to the norm part, because that's where it gets a little spicy. As Destiny's talking, I think I get to, just want to make sure I don't. Oh, no, we do want to hear what Destiny says. I'm sorry. Here we go.
The Arabs, after accepting the partition plan, would that not have completely and totally destroyed their legitimacy in the eyes of the entire Western world? Would
No.
there not have been? How not?
Well, first of all, I think that the Zionist leadership's acceptance of the partition resolution, and I think you may have written about this, that they accepted it because it provided international endorsement of the legitimacy of the principle of Jewish statehood, and they didn't accept the borders, and in fact later expanded the borders. Second of all,
No,
the borders were expanded in war.
They accepted the UN partition resolution, borders and all.
That's how they accepted.
You can say that some of the Zionists, deep in their hearts, had the idea that maybe at some point they would be able to get more.
Including their most senior leaders who said so, and I think you've quoted them as saying so.
But they grudgingly accepted what the United Nations, the world community, had said, this is what you're going to get.
And second of all, I mean, removing darker people, it's
dark.
It's intrinsic.
Jews are as dark as Arabs.
It's intrinsic to Western history. So the idea that Americans or Brits or the French would have an issue with, I mean, the French had been doing it in Algeria for decades. The Americans have been doing it in North America for centuries. So how would Israel forcibly displacing Palestinians somehow besmirch Israel in the eyes of the West?
Another example I want to give before Norm chimes in is Australia with the Aborigines. The Aborigines, those are called the Aborigines. Yes. It's really interesting just what happened to that group of people, how they were also displaced. We come back in here. Here comes Norm.
1944 resolution of the Labour Party. And at the time, even Bertrand Russell was a member of the Labour Party. It endorsed transfer of Arabs out of Palestine. As Mueen's pointed out, that was a deeply entrenched idea in Western thinking, that there was nothing, it doesn't in any way contradict or violate or breach any moral values to displace the Palestinian population. Now, I do believe there's a legitimate question. Had it been the case, as you said, Professor Morris, that the Zionists wanted to create a happy state with a Jewish majority, but a large Jewish minority, and if by virtue of immigration, like in our own country, given the current trajectories, non-whites who become the majority population in the United States quite soon. And according to democratic principles, we have to accept that. So if that were the case, I would say maybe there's an argument that had there been mass Jewish immigration, changed the demographic balance in Palestine, and therefore Jews became the majority. You can make an argument in the abstract that the indigenous Arab population should have been accepting of that, just as whites in the United States, quote unquote whites, have to be accepting of the fact that the demographic majority is shifting to non-whites in our own country. But that's not what Zionism was about.
Yep.
I did write my doctoral dissertation on Zionism, and I don't want to get now bogged down in abstract ideas. But as I suspect you know, most theorists of nationalism say there are two kinds of nationalism. One is a nationalism based on citizenship. You become a citizen, you're integral to the country. That's sometimes called political nationalism. And then there's another kind of nationalism, and that says the state should not belong to its citizens, it should belong to an ethnic group. Yep. Each ethnic group should have its own state. it's usually called the German Romantic idea of nationalism.
Yep.
Zionism is squarely in the German Romantic idea. That was the whole point of Zionism. We don't want to be Bundists and be one more ethnic minority in Russia. We don't want to become citizens and just become a Jewish people in England or France. We want our own state.
And that is the piece there that I think is incredibly significant. Notice how he made that comparison to the changing of the demographics in the United States compared to the demographics starting to change in, well, what was at that time Palestine, in reference to the creation of the state of Israel. There's a difference between people moving there and people trying to overtake the entire area and create a state just for them, and then push out the people that are not like them, or forcefully remove the people that are not like them. And it's very telling. What you'll hear out throughout this debate is that Destiny was just, I don't know if he was just not really aware or if he's paid to not be aware, because something about him, to me, I've always had this feeling that these people, certain people, are being propped up their plants. I've always had this feeling. I felt like Vosh is a plant. I felt like Destiny is a plant, because I feel like these people just kind of came out of nowhere. And what they do is they basically carry water for the Democrat establishment, right? And these people just, they soar, like their numbers soar. They're everywhere. All of a sudden, this person you never heard of. That's not typical for those of us in indie media, especially when you're just starting out. That's not normal. That's not normal. So I've always questioned it. I don't have proof, but I've always questioned if whether or not he is actually being paid to say what he's saying.
Like the Arab 23 states.
No, wait. Before we get to the Arabs, let's stick to the Jews for a moment, or the Zionists. We want our own state, and in that concept of wanting your own state, the minority at best lives on sufferance, and at worst gets expelled. That's the logic of the German Romantic Zionist idea of a state. That's why they're Zionists. Now, I personally have shied away from using the word Zionism ever since I finished my doctoral dissertation. Because
was that painful?
Because, as I said, I don't believe it's the operative ideology today. It's like talking about Bolshevism and referring to Khrushchev. I doubt Khrushchev could have spelled Bolshevik. But for the period we're talking about, they were Zionists. They were committed to their exclusive state with a minority living on sufferance, or at worst expelled. That was their ideology. And I really feel there's a problem with your happy vision of these Western Democrats like Weizmann, and they wanted to live peacefully with the Arabs. Weizmann described the expulsion in 1948 as, quote, the miraculous clearing of the land. That doesn't sound like somebody shedding too many tears at the loss of the indigenous population.
Let me just respond to the word unsufferance. The unsufferance I don't agree with. I think that's wrong. Mm-hmm. The Jewish state came into being in 1948. It had a population which was 20% Arab when it came into being. After Arab refugees, many of them had become refugees, but 20% remained in the country. 20% of Israel's population at inception in 1949 was Arab.
80% went missing.
No. We're talking about what remained in Palestine, Israel, after it was created. The 20% who lived in Israel received citizenship and all the rights of Israelis, except, of course, the right to serve in the army, which they didn't want to. And they have Supreme Court justices, they have Knesset members. they enjoyed
they lived
basically
under emergency laws until 1966
for a period. Sure, they lived under emergency.
So they didn't immediately have citizenship.
No, wait a second. At the beginning, it's not fantasy. At the beginning, they received citizenship, could vote in elections for their own people, and they were put into parliament. But in the first years, the Israeli, the Jewish majority suspected that maybe the Arabs would be disloyal because they had just tried to destroy the Jewish state. Then,
first of all, this piece right here where he said that they questioned if whether or not the Arabs would be disloyal. Why do they have to be loyal to you when you came into their home and created a state? Why do they have to be loyal to you? So you see, he doesn't even feel there's a problem with what he just said. None of this, by the way, the fact that the Palestinian people rejected that partition, none of that excuses Israel's behavior towards the Palestinian people today. None of that excuses Israel committing genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. None of that excuses Israel forcefully removing Palestinian people from their homes in the West Bank and taking over their homes and building those settlements, which are also against international law. None of that excuses that. So when Zionists bring up this talking point, well, they had this opportunity to accept this partition and they decided not to. What does that have to do with the behavior that Israel is displaying against the Palestinian people today?
They dropped the military government and they became fully equal citizens. So if the whole idea was they must have a state without Arabs, this didn't happen in 49, and it didn't happen in the
then why did you say, Professor Morris?
Yes.
Then why did you say without a population expulsion, a Jewish state would not have been established?
Because you're missing the first section of that paragraph, which was that they were being assaulted by the Arabs. And as a result, a Jewish state could not have come into being unless there had also been an expulsion of the population, which was trying to kill them.
So you hear this, right? We're going to go to the next clip too. You hear this, right? Okay. So he just admitted that they were admitting there had to be an expulsion of the Palestinian people. How is that acceptable? They don't have to be loyal to you in any way, shape, or form. When you came to their home and started making demands and saying you're going to create the state. Now we get to the piece here. Norm Finkelstein calls Destiny a fantastic moron. This is where things get a little bit more heated.
The Hamas guys who attacked the kibbutzim, they, apart from the attacks on the military sites, when they attacked the kibbutzim, were out to kill civilians, and they killed family after family, house after house. The Israeli attacks on Hamas installations and fighting. I don't know better. No, you don't know Israeli pilots. That's the problem.
Thank God.
You don't know Israeli pilots. They believe that they are killing Hamasniks. They're given certain objectives, and that's what they attack. And if the Hamas is hiding behind civilians die.
Every time they target a kid, I'm sure they believe it's Hamas. When they killed the 4 kids in the
they believe.
I know they believed it, even though they were diminutive size. Even though they were diminutive.
From that angle, you don't see the size.
No, they saw.
You don't see the size.
Let's leave aside.
Oh, I know what he's quoting here, but you've lied about this particular instance in the past. Those kids weren't just on the beaches, as often stated in articles. Those kids were literally coming out of a previously identified Hamas compound that they had operated from.
So listen to what Destiny says right here, guys. Listen to this part about the kids.
You don't see the size.
No, they saw.
You don't see the size.
Let's leave aside.
Oh, I know what he's quoting here, but you've lied about this particular instance in the past. Those kids weren't just on the beaches, as often stated in articles. Those kids were literally coming out of a previously identified Hamas compound that they had operated from.
So this is Destiny basically advocating for the IDF killing children. Pay attention to what he's saying there. He's saying those kids weren't just hanging out on the beach. They were coming out of a Hamas cabin. He is basically advocating for, or basically trying to find excuses for the IDF killing children.
They literally
Mr.
did.
Borelli,
You can
Mr.
Google
Borelli,
it.
with all due respect, you're such a fantastic moron. It's terrifying. That wharf was filled with journalists. There were tens, scores of journalists. That was an old fisherman's shack. What are you talking about? It's so painful. It's so painful to listen to this idiocy.
And to be clear, on the other side, you're implying that a strike was okayed on the Israeli side, where they said, we're just going to kill 4 Palestinian children today for no reason.
Do you believe that?
Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Right, you said right, there was a hotel of journalists. Do you think that they killed
kill more children?
Here we go. We'll never answer that.
I will answer the question.
Pilots were out to
I will
kill
even
4
answer
children.
And it was approved because that was a strike. That was a drone strike. So it was approved all the way up the chain that we're going to kill children today. We're going to kill Palestinian children today.
You want me to answer, or do you want your motor mouth to go? Okay, answer. In 2018, there was the Great March of Return in Gaza. By all reckonings of human rights organizations and journalists who were there, it was overwhelmingly nonviolent.
But organized by the Hamas.
Whoever organized it.
It was organized by Satan. Let's start with
by Hamas.
Okay.
See what's happening here? So he's talking about the 2018, the March of Return. It was a peaceful protest, and the IDF started shooting at the people. They started shooting at the Palestinian people. It was a peaceful protest. So what he does, not Norm, the other gentleman across from him, what he does is he tries to deflect away from that so that you're not focusing on what Israel did wrong, what the IDF did. He tries to mention, yeah, it was organized by Hamas. It doesn't matter who organized it. The protesters were peaceful. The protesters were not violent. We don't even know for sure if it was organized by Hamas. Regardless, it does not matter. Do you guys get that? Do you see what he's trying to do? Anything to take the responsibility off of Israel. This is a part of the Zionist propaganda. Always play the victim. Always.
Satan. Yeah. I agree. Let's go for the big one. The big Megillah. It's Satan. Okay? Overwhelmingly organized, overwhelmingly nonviolent. Resembled at the beginning the first intifada.
They
represent the first. Okay, not bombs. But
they tried to make holes in the fence. Okay, obviously.
Let's continue.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm not sure Israel behaved morally in that respect.
Okay.
No.
Wait.
I'm willing to grant you.
Please.
I'm willing to
allow me to.
You don't have to pursue I'm willing to grant.
Allow me to finish.
I don't know anything about.
See, anytime you're about to call out Israel's crimes, they always interrupt you because they don't want you to say it.
This I'd like to
Okay. So, as you know, along the Gaza perimeter, there was Israel's best trained snipers. Correct?
I don't know best trained. There were snipers.
Fine.
Snipers.
Okay. All right.
Because
hey, laugh. It's hilarious. The story is so funny.
You're lying about the Great March of Return had aspects of violence to it. According, even the UN says it themselves.
Okay.
But you only collect what the UN says that you like.
You see, the problem, Mr. Morelli, is you don't know the English language.
I can read from the UN website itself. In regards to the Great March of Return, they said, while the vast majority of protesters have acted in a peaceful manner, during most protests, dozens have approached the fence attempting to damage it, burning tires, throwing stones and Molotov cocktails towards Israeli forces, and flying incendiary kites and balloons into Israeli territory.
Let me pause. So let me explain to you what Destiny's doing right here. So anytime you have protests, obviously there are some people that may participate in some type of vandalism or some type of violence, right? Okay. But in his own words, reading it from the site, the vast majority of the protests that day were peaceful. So what Destiny is basically trying to argue is that because you had a few of them behaving that way, that gives the IDF the green light to shoot at all of them. How is that any different from the behavior of the police state in the United States? How is that any different? When I watched on TV and I watched in person, police officers during the BLM protests actually attack peaceful protesters that were not violent. And then you make the connection between the police in the US and who trains them, and you see that they're trained by the IDF in Israel, then you understand they're using the same tactics. So this is Destiny basically arguing that because a few people behaved that way, it was okay for the IDF to start shooting at all of them. This dude is a plant. I've called this before. This dude is a plant.
The latter resulted in extensive damage to agricultural land and nature reserves inside Israel and risked the lives of Israeli civilians. Some incidents of shooting and throwing of explosives also
talk fast.
I'm just
people think that you're coherent.
I'm just reading from the UN.
Yeah, but
I know you like them sometimes, only when they agree with you, though.
You got the months wrong. We're talking about the beginning in March 30th, 2018.
You just described that March as mostly peaceful.
Okay, allow me to finish. So there were the snipers. Okay, now you find it so far-fetched. Israelis purposely, deliberately targeting civilians? That's such a far-fetched idea. An overwhelmingly non-violent march. What did the international investigation?
Wasn't a march, it was a campaign.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
For months.
Whatever you want to call it.
For months.
Yeah. What did the UN investigation find?
Well, he just read it.
I read the report. I don't read things off of those machines. I read the report. What did it find? Brace yourself. You thought it was so funny, the idea of IDF targeting civilians. It found, go look this up on your machine.
I already know what you're going to say. You're going to say it found that only one or two of them were justified killings.
Targeted journalists, targeted medics, and here's the funniest one of all. It's so hilarious. They targeted disabled people who were 300 meters away from the fence and just standing by trees.
This is true. If
it's true.
Just quick pause.
Notice that anytime they call out Israel's crimes when they're not interrupted, but you call out Israel's crimes, all of a sudden it's if it's true. How is that any different than what the Israeli government does in the media? Whenever there are claims, whenever these commentators confront IDF soldiers or they confront Benjamin Netanyahu's advisors about the behavior of Israel and their reaction towards Palestinian civilians, particularly the children, notice that's coming from the Hamas, the health ministry. So you can't believe what they say. The numbers, the death tolls coming from the health ministry, you can't believe those numbers. But whenever Israel says that something is happening, you're not supposed to question it. You're supposed to take them at their word. So notice the same thing in this discussion. That's what that gentleman's doing. Lex chimes in here for a second. I don't know what he was. Okay. Let me skip past that part.
Suffering of civilians or suffering of anyone, it's at the obvious joyful camaraderie in the room. So I'm enjoying it, and also the joy of learning. So thank you.
Can we talk about the targeting civilian thing a little bit? I think there's like an important underlying, not necessarily that. I think it's important to understand. Yeah, I think it's important to understand. There's like three different things here that we need to think about. So one is a policy of killing civilians. So I would ask the other side. I'm going to ask all three because I know there won't be a short answer. Do you think there is a policy top down from the IDF to target civilians? That's one thing. Yeah. A second thing is
said yes.
When yeah, sure, okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, but then the second thing is
pause right here before he even goes on. You don't have to have a policy to target civilians just to target them. The police department in the United States may not have a policy that says you need to go out and target Black men that are driving. You need to go out and target these specific group of people. They may not have that written down as policy, but it can still be implied. That doesn't mean you don't have to have something written as policy in order to prove that people are doing it.
or there's two distinctions I want to draw between. I think Benny would say this. I would say this. I'm sure undoubtedly there have been cases where IDF soldiers, for no good reason, have targeted and killed Palestinians that they should not have done. That would be prosecutable as war crimes, as defined by the Rome Statute and the ICC.
Some have been prosecuted.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely sure.
Practically none.
I'm sure.
I'm sure
that we would all agree for soldiers that happens. But I think that it's important. I think that it's important that when we talk about military strikes, or we talk about things especially involving bombings or drone attacks, these are things that are signed off by multiple different layers of command, by multiple people involved in an operation, including intelligence gathering, including weaponeering, and
yeah, let's talk about intelligence gathering, because I wonder if you're part of intelligence. Let me explain something here. Notice how he's bringing it back to October 7th. So before there was the war in Gaza, the IDF was still killing Palestinians. They were beating them. They were harassing them. They were all these kinds of things that have been caught on video. This is why you can't just go back to October 7th. You have to talk about what has happened prior to October 7th. It's really easy to say, well, Hamas attacked first, so you have to go after them. If you relate it to October 7th, you have to talk about how Hamas was created in the first damn place. You have to talk about the fact that Netanyahu is the one who funded Hamas. This is all intentional. You have to talk about the fact that under international law, occupied people have a right to resist, and they have the right to have an armed resistance. So those are the things that need to be discussed. But see, people like Destiny, they're purposely trying to focus on just October 7th so that they don't have to call out and point fingers at what the IDF has been doing to Palestinian people for decades prior to this war.
There also have typically lawyers involved. When you make the claim that an IDF soldier shot a Palestinian, those three people, the three hostages that came up with white flags, and something horrible happened, I think that's a fair statement to make. And I think a lot of criticism is deserved. But when you make the statement that 4 children were killed by a strike, the claim that you're making, the claim that you're making is that multiple levels of the IDF signed off on just killing.
I have no idea what
that's great. If you don't understand the process, then let me educate you.
The IDF doesn't have to sign off on anything. The soldiers can do whatever the fuck they want, and they've been doing whatever they want. So you guys see the distraction? Sorry, I just want to get to this part here. So
of the IDF signed off on just killing.
I have no idea what.
That's great. If you don't understand the process, then let me educate you. I can tell you. I do understand the process. I'm telling you. I'm trying to explain you right now. Yes. It's basic military. You can ask anybody that's talked about
Wikipedia. Can you tell me what your knowledge of the IDF is?
You can talk to people who work in the military.
What's your knowledge of the IDF?
The audience can look this up. Do you think that bombing and strikes are decided by one person in the field? Do you think one person
can I respond to
airplane or a drone strike?
The pilot doesn't do it on his own.
Strike cells have entire apparatuses that are designed to figure out how to strike and who to strike. So when you say that 4 children are targeted, you're saying that a whole apparatus is trying to murder 4 Palestinian children.
You make my argument better than me.
Ridiculous argument.
Because really, that it's impossible at the command level. It's impossible at the command level. But you said that they couldn't have done it at the bottom if it weren't also at the top.
You don't understand the strength of the claim that you're making. You're saying that from a top-down level, that lawyers, multiple commanders, and all these people signed off
not tell me what I don't understand.
4 Palestinians.
It's true. Children. It's true. I don't spend my nights on Wikipedia. I read books. I admit that as a signal.
Waste of time.
Yeah, I know books are a waste of time. With all due regard,
for you they are. The only thing you take from them are 2 or 3 quotes that you use.
I completely respect the fact, and I'll say it on the air, as much as I find totally disgusting what's come of your politics, a lot of the books are excellent. And I'll even tell you, because I'm not afraid of saying it, whenever I have to check on a basic fact, the equivalent of going to the Britannica, I go to your books. I know you got a lot of the facts right.
Benny Moore's books
I would never say books are a waste of time. And it's regrettable to you that you got strapped with a partner who thinks that all the wisdom.
He didn't say they're a waste of time.
I'd like to respond to what you were saying.
So what was interesting too, I'm just going to fast forward. I think there's one more piece that I wanted to, one more part here. And then I'm going to show you who Destiny really is. Is this the part? Oh yeah, I think that's the end of. Oh wait a minute, here we go.
If I understand you correctly, you're basically making the claim that none of these attacks could have happened without going through an entire chain of command.
For strike cells that are involved in like drone attacks or plane attacks or
My understanding of the Israeli military, and you could perhaps, you've served in it, you would know better. It's actually a fairly chaotic organization.
No, that's not true. Especially not the Air Force. Extremely, extremely organized.
Oh yeah, and we should believe you because why? Let me explain this, guys. Destiny is here. He is partnered with a former IDF soldier. And we're supposed to take this guy at his word in reference to how the IDF operates. These people are paid liars. Paid liars. Let me show you something about Destiny because I told you. Okay. Destiny debated my comrade Nick from RBN. He debated him a while back. They had a debate about let me remove this, get my timestamp. They had a debate about the police state, right? And about fascism. Now, let me bring this back up here because I want to show you, and I want to show you how I know when something's an act or not. I want you to understand, pay attention to the way that he is towards Nick versus the way that he was towards Norm Finkelstein. Listen to this.
I don't think there are ways to like predict that. I think there's a few things that like point to small decreases, but like what's like the surefire ways to like reduce crime? Like what are the surefire funding ways to do that?
Okay. So he's asking, what are the surefire ways to reduce crime? Now, why is that? I'm going to show you a little bit about his background because I told you, I feel like this guy's a plant. I feel like he's an op. And when you see his background, I think you're going to understand that more.
Because as someone who do not have this inherent bigoted and racist belief that some people are irredeemable, I believe if you provide for people, and this has been shown in small scale studies, providing housing, healthcare, increased wage, actually a functioning society, because we don't live in a functioning society unless you in the like top 5%, right?
Well, so I think that most people in America are living in a pretty functioning society. No,
hold on to that. All right. He said, I think most people in America are living in a functioning society, right? Okay. Hold on to that statement.
No, well, if you like the 60% of workers that live in paycheck to paycheck, I don't know when last time you had to, but that is not an easy existence. And I'm speaking as someone who's a member of the proletariat, someone who grew up broke, who I literally housed 3 people in the last 2 years who otherwise would have been homeless.
Sure. And that, I mean, like there are
who worked 70 hours a week, but he was literally on the verge of being homeless, can't afford a car. What kind of existence is this?
Pause. Okay. Now, Nick is talking about what it's like to grow up being poor, right? Hold on to that as well. This will all make sense in a second. I want you to focus on Destiny, focus on his responses and how he's reacting to this information, and then you'll see why.
Pathetic lives. People literally work 60 hours a week. They come home, they watch Netflix, and they think we live in advanced society. How are we advanced? We don't have health care. How are we advanced if people can't travel? How are we advanced if people don't have family paid maternity leave? That's decolonizing your mind. The things that you guys think make you happy is not, which is why depression rates is through the roof, which is why they subscribe you guys these pills, and you guys take these pills like, oh, everything's going okay. I guess I'm happy now. No, this society is so broken, it broke your brain. Your brain is so broken that everyone taking depression pills now because our society is junk. Like, this is not how we're supposed to live. Now, some people have it lucky. Like I have it lucky now because as a writer, political commentator, like I'm lucky I'm not in that grind and same as you. But most people can't say that. Most people are drawn factory buys. Now, I do concede this.
Pause. Most people can't say that, right? All right. All right. Now, what was interesting about that conversation is that Destiny, the way that he was sitting there, he was basically pretending like this was news to him, right? Check this out. So I'm telling you, motherfuckers be plants. Look, this is Destiny's page, right? Early life. Stephen Bunnell II was born in Omaha, Nebraska to a Cuban-American mother and a white American father. He was raised in a conservative Catholic home, and he attended Creighton Preparatory School, a private Jesuit high school for boys. When he was a preteen, his mother's home daycare business collapsed and his family's home was foreclosed. A few years later, his parents moved to take care of an aging relative, after which he lived with his grandmother until he was 18. In 2007, Bonnell enrolled at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, where he studied music while working night shifts as a restaurant manager at a casino. Ultimately, unable to juggle both his education and full-time work, he dropped out of college in 2010. Soon after, he was fired from his restaurant position and found work as a carpet cleaner. Now, why is that important? Why is it that when Nick was talking about what it's like to be working class, etc., what it's like living paycheck to paycheck, why is it that Destiny in that conversation, why was he pretending like he didn't know what that was like? Because one or two things is happening here. Either this bio that he has is false, and these things didn't happen, and he's just a creation by the Democratic Party, or these things did happen, and after he started his streaming career as a gamer, somebody from the DNC got a hold of him. I would not be surprised if someone from the DNC or someone adjacent to the DNC offered him some money to do what he's doing. It would not surprise me. I told you before, I think some of these people are plants, because it goes on to say here, check this out. Let me make sure I get when it goes to the political part here, talks about all the debates and stuff that he had. It says here in 2020, he supported Joe Biden. Following Biden's victory, he led a canvassing campaign in support of Democratic candidates, Ossoff and Warnock, with the help of approximately 140 volunteers mobilized from Bonnell's online audience. You see this? The campaign knocked on an estimated 17,500 to 20,000 doors in Columbus, Georgia, making it one of the larger campaigns of the election. Bonnell led another canvassing operation in support of Mark Gugel for the 2021 Omaha mayor election. So do you see, look, I think this guy was paid. Now, we may never know for sure. Oh, someone actually put something in the comments. Excuse me if I missed this. Kinky. He's paid Sabby. Read Caleb Maupin's book, BreadTube. Max Blumenthal loved it. It explains everything about the destiny type. So see, there you go. You see what I mean? So I told you guys, be very suspicious of these people that come out of nowhere and just blow up in the political space. Now, yes, he did have a following in the gaming community, but pay attention to these people, because for the rest of us, this is not the case. The rest of us, we actually had to put in the work. So if that person is not already a celebrity or a public figure, there's no way that you just get these spots and land all these spots like this. Like, you have to work your ass off. And even then, especially with the suppression with YouTube, there's no freaking way. This guy blew up out of nowhere. So anyway, the point is this: either that bio on his wiki page is not true, or it is true, and he has been paid and propped up, and I believe by the establishment. I wouldn't be surprised if it's intelligence as well, to say what he's saying. I call it like I see it. It's just a mess. It's just an absolute mess. Let me go ahead and put this here. Doot, doot, doot. Yes, I understand that. Where did it go? I understand that Dog Main Destiny has been around for 10 plus years. You're not listening to what I'm saying. He started off as a gaming streamer, as someone who was streaming video games, then decided to move over to politics. What I'm saying is at that point in time, that was after 2016 when he decided to move over to politics. And what I'm trying to explain to you is YouTube's algorithm had changed after that time. So there's no way he would have grown the way that he did if he wasn't already propped up. He got some help, just like Vosh got some help. I've been trying to tell people about these people. Let's go to some of the comments here. But that debate is, if you have time, watch the full debate. It's almost 5 hours long, but watch the full thing. But it's just, they actually had a guy who was a soldier in the IDF. Give me a break. Give me a break. Olive Oil says Destiny was pathetic and had no business being in that debate. Thank you, Metal. Destiny should stick to gaming. Shut up, dude. You guys notice too, a lot of these people that started off as gamers and they move over to political commentators, notice how they give cred for imperialism. Notice how they tend to be against, the anti-war movements. Notice the rhetoric that they have in reference to the war in Ukraine. Notice how they tend to be okay for the US giving, weapons to other countries. Pay attention to that. Thank you for that. Thank you, B-Man. Reminder, Destiny is a paid DNC hack. Ani Shah says, yes, Sabby, Aboriginal people in Australia have been suffering from British invasion for centuries. Thank you, Trash Panda, for the super sticker. Thank you. Thank you, Andre. Unpopular opinion. I think Trump would be worse in many ways, but it's a low bar. Still not voting for Biden. Not a genocide apologist. Jurgen says Bernie does not take corporate donations, nor does a majority of Justice Democrats. Doesn't fucking matter. He carries water for the Democratic Party. He tells you to vote for the people who do take corporate donations. Bernie Sanders is a fraud.